Hello and welcome to this week's Productivity Enhancer. This week we have part one of a two-part productivity enhancer about blocks in SolidWorks. In my experience, you either use blocks or you don't use blocks, and there's very few people who just dabble in blocks. However, if you're one of the people who doesn't use blocks at all, you should consider using them for many different reasons. The primary reason being that they give you an excellent amount of flexibility within parts and assemblies. The first example and the simplest use of blocks is a simple 4-bar linkage. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up a sketch on the front plane and just make a 4-bar deal here. Doesn't have to be perfectly lined up or anything. Just a 4-sided geometric figure. Now SolidWorks has a toolbar specifically devoted to blocks, and here you can see that I've had that pulled up right here. However, if you don't have your blocks toolbar available, then you can just right click and it's right here, blocks. So I'll go ahead and create some blocks and then give you a short explanation afterward. So here we're just going to take one individual line, make a block, click yes. Do the same thing for all of these bars until we have 4 separate blocks. So you can see we have 4 blocks here. Now by converting these individual lines into blocks, we give each individual line its own freedom to move within the context of the other lines that are connected to it. So essentially we've created a 4-bar linkage that can move pretty much in any direction here. And I'm just clicking and dragging. You can see if I click any one of these, it doesn't change the length or the dimension of the actual line, but it allows you to grab it and move all 4 of those bars simultaneously. So once again, this is our simplest use of blocks, just to create a simple 4-bar linkage, and each one of these lines is independent yet connected to the other blocks in this example. So now let's take a second to take a look at our commands in our toolbar for blocks. We have make block, which makes a new block. We have edit block, which if one is highlighted, gives us the ability to edit that block. However, we'll just bounce out of that. And then we can insert a new block, and by clicking insert, it shows us all of the open blocks, or we can browse to any saved blocks that you might have. And you can see when we do insert block, block 1 is highlighted, that's this line right here, and it allows you to place it just like it would in an assembly. But we're not going to insert any block right now, so we'll just move on. We can add and remove sketch entities from and to a block, and for that we need to have the block highlighted again in edit mode, and then we can add or remove sketch entities to this block here. We have the block rebuild, which is a lower level rebuild. It just helps us rebuild the blocks instead of rebuilding the entire part at this point. We can save the block, and we can explode the block. More on that later. We don't really have enough sketch entities to explode in this instance. And lastly, we have belt, chain, insert a belt, and more on that later when we get to use that function. So that's the blocks toolbar. And you can create blocks in parts and assemblies. So that's our simple 4-bar linkage example in a part file. But let's take a look at how we can utilize blocks in an assembly. So I'm just going to open up an assembly just like we always do. And you see this little message here. You may have read this or you may have not read it, but let's take a quick look at it. It might give us some hints. Select a component to insert, then place it in the graphics area or hit OK to locate it at the origin. Okay, we're probably pretty familiar with that step. Let's read on. Or design top-down using a layout with blocks. Aha! Parts may then be created from the blocks. So those of you who've never ever used blocks have probably never created a layout, so let's go ahead and do that, and let's get it on the front view. So for this assembly, I'm just going to select a line and sketch out some pretty easy geometry here. And grab the 3-point arc. There we go. So now I'm going to mirror this. Just create a mirror line here. And then we'll go ahead and mirror entities. Box select the bottom. Mirror about. Select that line again. And click OK. Alright, so let's just add a few final things here. Let's make this line and this arc tangent. And if you're noticing, it's actually updating automatically in the mirrored sketch. So we don't need to worry about that. Now let's dimension some of these lines. Make the back of it 6, and we'll make it a radius of 5. Alright, so we'll accept that dimension, and we can actually delete this center line now. And now we're going to make some blocks out of these 2 sketch bodies. So I'm just going to box select this whole bottom guy, go ahead and make a block, click OK. Now we have block 1 that's associated with this bottom sketch body. Okay, we're going to do the same to the top one, so we'll box select that, make a block out of it, click OK. Now we have 2 blocks. Now what we can do is we can move both of these components and that block stays together. So notice that I cannot drag out any of these dimensions to change anything. It's all one solid block. Same for the bottom, you can see here. And I'm just going to add some relations here. So let's relate this point to the origin. And now we'll make this point and those 2 points also coincident. Click OK. So even though those are mated together, we have an entire 360 degrees of freedom within that coincident relationship. However, we're not done. As you can see, we're still in a 2D mode. This is top-down design, so that means that we're going to have to go back and turn this into a 3D model. So we'll just accept that. So what we need to do next is actually save this assembly. So we'll save it and rebuild and save. Let's call it hinge blocks and save it. And as you can see, right now this assembly is still in 2D, two-dimensional. So what we need to do is go ahead and give these sketches some three-dimensional geometry. So how we do that is right-click on block, and we can make part from block. Now we're given the option to either project that part off of the sketch as kind of like an offset, or have the part basically embedded in the sketch. And that's exactly what we want. So we're just going to leave it there. Click yes. So now we have to create a name for this part and save it out. Let's just call it hinge bottom block. Hit save. And now you can see right in our feature manager design tree, we have a part associated with hinge bottom block 1, and that sketch is right there. So in order to create some 3D geometry, we're going to have to edit this part. And then once we do, we have the option to extrude that sketch. So let's go and grab it right now. It is sketch 1. Let's select midplane and extrude it at 100 millimeters. Click OK. And there you go. Our block is now a 3D part. So now we have to repeat the same exact process for the bottom one, but first we need to exit out of the edit, and then we can make the part from block. Save it as hinge top block, and here we go, hinge top block. We have the same information just as we did with the first block. So let's go ahead and edit that part. We'll extrude it out. Oh, let's select the sketch first. Make sure it's midplane. And it's at 100 mil. There we go. Once we exit out of here, we have our hinge. And you can see that it has all of the functionality as the sketches did when they were blocks. Of course, here we do have some overlapping feature, and where we would have to cut away the fittings to make sure that these fit in the slots. But you get the idea. Designing with blocks gives you a different option on creating your parts. So join us next week as we explore more opportunities to use blocks in both parts and assemblies. Thanks for watching this week's Productivity Enhancer, and until next time.